Good evening, Village members. We are super excited for you to join us tonight. We're going to spend the next hour with you as we introduce you to something that is dear to our hearts, the Racial Justice and Healing Fund. We all know that too often Black and Brown St. Louisans and people of color don't have the power or the resources for community healing, justice, and transformation. Nearly 6 years ago, after the Ferguson uprising, there's an urgency to lean into the discomfort of racial healing, needed to build a just and equitable society. So, the Racial Healing and Justice Fund makes it a priority that residents who are directly affected by racial inequity are the very ones who design the strategy and govern the investment of the funds into the community. To ground us tonight, we're going to engage you in what we like to do, one of our opening activities. Tonight, we're going to be doing a centering activity into which we're going to alert our senses so that we can all can be on the same page. So, first thing, I want you to notice 5 things around you that you can see. Next, I want you to think about or notice 4 things that you can feel. Now let's move to 3 things that you can hear. Take a moment to listen and note 3 things that you hear in the background. This can be the chirp of a bird, the hum of the refrigerator, or the faint sounds of traffic from a nearby road. And finally, we're going to notice 2 things that we can smell. Bring your awareness to smells that you usually filter out, whether they're pleasant or unpleasant. Perhaps the breeze is carrying the whiff of trees if you're outside, or the smell of a fast food restaurant across the street. This is a quick and easy exercise to bring us on one accord and to bring us to a mindful state quickly. Mindfulness exercises help us center ourselves so that we can show up in this work together. Throughout tonight's presentation, we ask that you join us in recognizing the following community agreements. But before we do that, we're going to introduce ourselves and the members of the Racial Healing and Justice Fund. I'm Caleb Holloway. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. And what racial healing and justice means to me is the ability to love yourself radically enough to be there for yourself, your people, and your community.
Good evening, everyone. I am Dawn Turner. My pronouns are she, her. I am originally from Venice, Illinois. I am a strong advocate of the East St. Louis, Illinois area. And racial healing to me means freedom and weightlessness and pleasure.
We also want to lift up one of our members who's not able to join us tonight, Tiana Glass.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Janique Johnson. I use the she series of pronouns. And what racial healing and justice means to me is equitable access for everyone to everything.
I'm up next. Hi, I'm Michelle Barbeau. My pronouns are she and her. And I was just a few months ago from South City, St. Louis, but I just moved to Maryland Heights. Racial healing for me is about regaining all of the energy we spend on defending our worth and investing that into our lives, our spirit, our families, and our community.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lady Hicks. I'm from East St. Louis, Illinois. And racial healing I'm sorry, and I also use the pronouns she and her. Um, what racial healing means to me is seeing things equal, not putting no one beneath anyone, but we are equal on one accord.
Good evening. My name is Patrice Hill. I'm born and raised North City, St. Louis, Missouri. And I guess what racial healing means to me is being acknowledged for who we are and not having to quantify or qualify who we are to others to be accepted.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Aaron Rogers. My pronouns are the he series. I grew up in East St. Louis and I currently live in Florissant, Missouri. Racial healing means to me prioritizing wholeness for those for whom history has been unjust. Good to see you all here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mia. My pronouns are of the she, her, and hers variety. And yes, to prioritize and wholeness, I currently live in U City, so that is what I will rep for this situation. For me, racial healing means that the exhaustion and the mental labor that we go through to have conversations will cease because equity, freedom, and liberation for Black people, for Indigenous people, Brown people will be the norm and not the exception. So that is racial healing for me. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, CGB, for introducing yourselves. Tonight, we want you to join us in the following community agreements. We want you to enter the space with good intentions. We want you to stay engaged. We want you to call in and not call out. We want you to make space and take space. We want you to share the message you hear tonight, not the messenger. We want you to share your questions through our Q&A feature, but please do connect over the chat as well. Tonight's information session will be presented by the members of the Community Governance Board. The CGB is made up of Black and brown people and people of color of the St. Louis community who oversee the fund's investment. This includes finalizing the fund's grant priorities based on community voice, reviewing and selecting applications to receive funding, and continuing to develop the fund's focus through ongoing community design. The Community Governance Board will spend some time talking to you tonight about the following: the history of the Racial Healing and Justice Fund, our granting timeline, philosophy, and priorities, the application process, and our funding budget, the various roles and groups within the CGB. And once again, you will also have an opportunity to connect with us through the Q&A session to ask your questions, but also connect with us over the chat. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to David, who's going to talk about our funder partnerships.
Hello, everybody. It's really great to be here with you all in community. So I just wanted to really briefly talk about, my name is David Dwight. I'm the Executive Director for Ferguson, and just wanted to take a quick moment to talk about the structure of the Racial Healing and Justice Fund. So this fund has been a long time labor of love, dreamed up first in the Ferguson Commission's signature call to action to create funds and direct investments that are focused specifically on racial equity, and racial healing is such an important component of that. And so Forward Through Ferguson worked originally with Deaconess Foundation and Missouri Foundation for Health over the last 5 years, aided by some really powerful on-the-ground thought leadership of those who are doing healing work historically here, and ultimately worked to establish this fund with the investment of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And so Forward Through Ferguson ourselves, we're not grant makers, nor are we foundation. Forward Through Ferguson is a small but mighty team of 5 full-time staff members and 5 part-time staffers. And so we don't benefit financially from the fund, but just provide staff support and project management support to the Community Governance Board, who are really the leaders of the fund. And like Kaylin just mentioned, make all the decisions on who receives funding. And so the FTF team doesn't vote on any of those decisions. And Deaconess Foundation lends their services as a fiscal agent, holding the pooled funding dollars, which includes over a dozen local foundations, as well as some national partners who have pooled into the fund. And Deaconess supports the grant administration process. And with that, I'll pass it over to Letty.
Okay, thank you, David. So the roles for the Racial Healing and Justice Fund are so the Community Governance Board are responsible for the following. Hold on just a second, you guys. I'm sorry, guys. The pleasure of working from home. Okay, so first attending trainings and meetings, participating in developing knowledge and skills around community-based granting process, identifying and prioritize community needs within the scope of funds purpose, participate in group discussions by reviewing and scoring funding proposals. Ensure the committee has the necessary skills, knowledge, and tools to make funding decisions. Help develop and facilitate an orientation process for new GCB members and make recommendations for and help in recruitment efforts of future members. Participate in storytellings and interviews. And now I return it over to my GCB member, Dawn.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Thank you so much, Letty. So there was a whole summer of engagement, and the community design is based on that. There was engagement with persons of color, organizers, and healers before the fund launched. It's their voices that's at the center of our priorities. We encourage you to take a look at the website for a rundown and also to look at the full engagement report. Next, I'd like to share with you our timeline. So the Community Governance Board stepped into our roles and started orientations in October of 2020. Our first granting cycle began on November 5th, 2020, and there was a 3-week request for applications. Applications were then reviewed, and the first round of local Black and Brown-led initiatives were selected to move forward to second virtual interviews, which took place in December. After that, the Community Governance Board voted on final grantees and award amounts, and grant recipients were notified in January of 2021. I like to talk about how we're different, how the Racial Healing and Justice Fund is different. Not only is this a fund exclusively set aside for Black and Brown-led organizations, but I think Letty talked a little bit about the decision-making power lying within the Community Governance Board. The funders do not have decision-making authority. Our governance board is also a flexible board that has reflected on the first granting cycle to see how we could make improvements. And we've also connected with applicants in order to make adjustments before the start of the second granting cycle. So speaking of our second granting cycle, that will kick off. The second granting cycle of the Racial Healing and Justice Fund will open on March 21st. The application window will remain open for 4 weeks. At this time, I am going to turn the program over to my CGB member, Aaron, who's going to talk to you about the granting philosophy.
Hey, thank you, Dawn. And I am happy to talk to you about the granting philosophy and also our funding priorities. So history has shown that there's a need to dismantle philanthropy as usual. Traditional philanthropy sometimes reinforces the barriers that it seeks to solve. And in order for us to make real change, the community has recognized that we have to share power. The fund seeks to move from ivory tower decision-making to on-the-ground decision-making informed by community, not given to community. Power should rest with the people that the fund seeks to impact. The Community Governance Board is made up of community members who look like you. The community carries the decision-making. This is our fund. Some of the guiding principles of our granting philosophy are prioritizing inclusion and community voice, growing community awareness, power, and resilience, and humanizing equity. And I'll describe briefly what each of those sections mean. So prioritizing inclusion and community voice means that there should be room at the table for everybody. Our table seeks to provide a place for those who have been historically marginalized. We may be marginalized through systemic processes, but we are mighty, and the Community Governance Board seeks to remember that. Growing community awareness, power, and resilience, there is power in our collective work, and we want to ensure that we help communities discover and defend their ability to determine their own destinies. And lastly, we're humanizing equity. Quite simply, the gaps have stories. The stories have faces, and those faces have names. We are guided by lived experience over here. Community includes you, the whole you, and that is what makes our communities more vibrant and able to thrive. So next, I'll describe our funding priorities, and you'll hear some resonances between our philosophy and our funding priorities. The first thing to mention about the funding priorities is that the funding priorities were developed by the community through a community engagement process. They come from the community, they weren't given to the community. Our fund seeks to heal the core of the community while changing the conditions that inhibit our individual and collective thriving. So those are our funding priorities: healing the core of the community and changing the conditions that inhibit our individual and collective thriving. This is a little bit about how we do that work. We seek to fund initiatives that heal individual and community trauma, initiatives that get more people involved in changing the systems that exist, initiatives that prepare people of color to get involved in healing work, initiatives that help local communities create and cultivate healing assets, and initiatives that understand that healing justice work is a long game and that we have to build up the capacity over time. It's also important to note that the community added some additional things that are also important to them in terms of determining what gets funding priority. And those are some things that I think we all might resonate with. But they are youth at the center, strengthening the community through capacity building, storytelling, because obviously we can't change the narratives if we don't get to tell our own stories, education and training, which is really about just sharing knowledge and sharing wisdom that will liberate all of us. Supporting healers and organizers, which is another way of saying that we want to support the people who are actually doing the work. And then we want to make sure that we are looking towards things that have a direct impact, that have a tangible impact on our community and our partners. So thank you for listening to our granting philosophy and our funding priorities. Now I'm going to pass it to the esteemed Lady Ashley.
I'm laughing because you just called me esteemed. I don't think I've ever been called esteemed before, but I will take it. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you, Erin, for that lovely, lovely overview of the Racial Healing and Justice Fund. I wanted to just take you all through our webpage to show you what it looks like. We have a really awesome webpage talking about the Racial Healing and Justice Fund. It tells you a little bit about the fund and how it was community designed and community led. The great thing about it is you can always go here to review our funding priorities that Erin talked about fabulously. So prioritizing inclusion and community voice, growing community awareness, power, and resilience, as well as humanizing equity. The funding priorities, that wonderful diagram you saw, explains that we want to target initiatives, again, that heal community trauma, engage our residents in systems change work, prepare POC leaders to organize for healing justice, and build capacity, right? Like that's something that we're really looking for. There's so many folks out there doing the work, and we don't want those folks who are doing the work to be tuckered all the time. We want to keep them strong, cultivating those assets and aligning those resources, right? So we get a little bit more into healing the core and what that looks like, talking about narrative, supporting art and creative expression, expanding that capacity and those opportunities for community members to grieve and connect to their cultural assets, provide platforms for multiple people to build power, and investing directly in grassroots organizations. We want to connect folks to resources, invest in community, and support our relationships through restoration and respect and trust building. Like they said, y'all, the CGB has lived experience, and we do not place that lived experience above or below any type of experience. We know it's just as valid and just as important to lead and make decisions, which they have done and still are doing. We want us to just continue to support holistic health, not just physical health, but that spiritual and emotional health that makes us whole as community members and organizers who are working through social justice. We have to change these conditions, y'all. So investing in our leaders, building that capacity, grassroots knowledge, really continuing to broaden engagement with residents like you all, and to continue to make those connections between our new and our young change agents, those folks who have that experience. We call them seasoned. That's the word we're going to use. I'm seasoned. We want to connect with you and continue to promote systemic change, and also aligning philanthropic funding and other local investments to see the work that we're doing here. So showing you this website, what's important, those funding priorities, knowing that it's a community design fund. Erin went over the granting philosophy with you. And I want to show you what we're going to be doing moving forward. So remember, visit that website. That page is going to be your ground source for everything that you need that is RHJF, that's Racial Healing and Justice Fund related. So I want to take some time to say congratulations to our first Cycle Grantees by name. So we have Brittany Farrell, sponsored by Jamal Birth Village with the Lucky You Got a Mama documentary film project. We have Brownpreneurs in their Teen Summit program, Communities First with United Voices, Dream Builders for Equity with the Dream Builders Academy program, Good Journey with the Black Youth Corps, Our Community, Our World Project, Kaliba Hart and NLJ Counseling with the Flotation Spa and Emotional Freedom Technique Therapy, Peace Weaving Wholeness with the Sankofa Village Griot Project, Our Voices, Our Wisdom, y'all, we got storytelling in there, Rustic Roots Sanctuary, a farmers market Senior Outreach and STEM Summer Camp Program, Sister Keeper Empowerment Center, the IDM Mobile Wellness Program, the Collective 314's Yoga for the People, the Justice Fleet's Grief Garden, the Nehemiah Program, Greater House Sober Living Project, and Your Words STL Crossing Delmar Project. So if I could get some cheers in the chat box, CGB, if you all want to unmute yourself to give props to our first Cycle Grantees, there will be a press release out soon, and you'll also be able to find out more about them on our webpage. But we just wanted to say, what's up, y'all? Congratulations, and keep on doing this amazing, amazing work. We are so grateful for you. Yes. All right, so I'm just gonna let you know what's coming up next, right? You're wondering about the second granting cycle. Well, we told you a little bit. We want to tell you a little bit more. There are 2 grant tracks for the upcoming March 21st granting cycle. That is when it opens, March 21st. So we will have responsive grants. These grants are going to be for those applications between $5,000 and $20,000 that are requesting that money for response. That's going to be that quicker on the ground moving grant money, okay? And then we have initiative funding, and this is going to be funding for applications between $40,000 and $100,000. So some of those bigger initiatives that may take a little bit more. So that's it. You heard it. 2 granting tracks for the upcoming March 21st granting cycle. This granting cycle is going to be open. We're going to be calling for applications for 4 weeks. So get ready, y'all. It's coming up. And so next, I am going to turn it over to our lovely CGB member, Michelle, to talk to you a little bit more about the working group roles.
Hello, hello. Congratulations to the first grantees. I'm still kind of like over here, like excited about it. Congratulations. So the next bit that we'd like to talk to you about is the CGB, the Community Governance Board, and how it is composed. What are we doing? What are the different folks that you're looking at and speaking to tonight? What are we up to? So it is broken into 2 work groups that got to self-select into different areas that we could use our own gifts and our own expertise, or maybe just our curiosity and interest. So I happen to be a part of the Grants and Allocation Work Group. This is the group that everyone normally thinks of. When they think of granting, they're thinking of grants, they're thinking reviews, they're thinking yeses and nos, right? But we're different. We keep saying it, but we're different. The community is baked into everything that we do. One of my fellow grants and allocation folks keep saying, this is the people's money. I mean, we cannot forget it. So throughout the entire process, we are developing the cycle itself and how it works based off of what does the community need? How can we make this process as accessible and as painless as possible for those applicants themselves? So that means you actually get a chance to interact with us rather than this wall that goes between the applicant and the recipient and every other grant. You get to talk to us. We're not sitting on high, we're your neighbors. So that means you can ask us questions, you can get tech support when uploading the application itself, and then even afterwards, we're going to give you feedback as well if you'd like, because we want to make sure that your grant game is lifted up. It's not just about this fund, it's about building your capacity for onward and onward spiring future success and capacity. So then the nuts and bolts, right? The grant cycle comes in, we get a chance to look at those interviews and look at those projects. That's my favorite part, where we get to see what kind of amazing, innovative things that the community is coming up with. These are things that came from our own needs. And now you would like extra assistance, capacity, support, cheering to bring it further into the community. It's so exciting. It is incredibly humbling to be able to do this work. So first, thanks. Y'all are pretty brilliant. Then we get a chance to actually review it. We discuss amongst ourselves and even ask clarifying questions, schedule interviews to actually meet the people, to have a human to human interaction. Trust me, it's really relaxed, tranquilo. It's nothing big. It's, again, we're your neighbors, we're your community members. So it's not that bad. It's not a job interview. Then from there, we do have our own discussions as a grants and allocation group, make discussions and make recommendations to the full CGB, who again, the full collective gets to make that final vote. These grants aren't a transaction, they're a partnership. So that means on top of the initial process of moving through it, we were talking about feedback before. Thinking back to our funding priorities, we want to make sure that not only do you get this experience to go through applying for this grant, maybe even getting it, but then also everything you do is elevated for the future, because we can't stop cheering for your success. So I'll just pass it along to Mia to talk about the other work group.
Hey y'all. Okay, so I am going to talk to you all about the Community Voice and Learning Work Group. And our group is responsible for, like, we have a really, really important and great job. I think we are responsible for advocating on behalf of, for lifting up the voice of and engaging with you, right? So we are all about the community and what you all need. What does the community need? So that we can shift what we're looking for according to what you say is necessary for the transformation and growth of the community, right? So we're listening to hear ideas about programs the community needs, access the community is lacking, and basically, like, what do you see in your community that needs to be uplifted so that we can move forward, right? And so once we get that information, that is how we kind of help sift through the applicants that we're getting, because we want this fund. We want this fund to help the people, the groups, the projects, et cetera, that are going to be, again, transformational, right? Transformational for us, transformational in the way that it's centering what we think, what we need, our priorities, right? So this is not about what the Community Voice and Learning Group thinks is a priority. It is about what the community thinks is a priority. Ultimately, we just want to ensure that Black people, that Brown people, community members are the people that are front and center in this mission of racial healing and justice. We are committed, super, super, super committed to doing this work with you, the people, because as a part of your community, we want to work with you. We know that at the end of the day, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. We're not about eating any more Black and Brown peoples and ideas and giving them to anybody else. We want you all at the table that you built. So come and eat with us. Let's fellowship. Let's find out what we need to do to transform our communities. And let's spend all of our money, y'all. Let's spend our money on us and uplifting us. So I'm going to pass the mic actually back to Michelle, because the M&Ms just like to hang out with each other. And she is going to talk a little bit more about the specifics of the timeline. Go ahead, Em.
Thank you, Em. So we've mentioned it before, but what's next? This is the exciting part. The second cycle opens March 21st. It's going to be open for 4 weeks. So that means there's time to ask us questions, get that technical support, anything that will help you put your best version forward. So on April 18th, that deadline does close. So that way we can kick into gear and get a chance to see what you're up to, what you want to come into being. The CGB then gets a chance to review it. We'll go ahead and schedule those interviews in May. And then in June, the second cycle of grantees will be chosen. So from here, I just want to chat with the community. What are your questions and answers? Let's pass it along to this section of the forum. I'll go ahead and read the first question. So this one was submitted ahead of time. And this one was, what are the most important goals among your recommendations? It was asked by Quentin. Thanks. Thoughts?
I can say something. Do you want me to answer? Is that helpful?
Go for it.
Okay. So I think that it's a good question. I also would kind of turn that around and say, what do you think the goals should be? Right? Like, what do you recommend? Because it's not about really what's important to us, right? It's about what's important to you all. What is important to the community? And then base whatever your project or your goal, base it on that. And when you say that, and when you tell us, in the application process, what's grabbing us are these stories, right? That voice. What are we hearing that's like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. This is gonna blow the whole, blow the grid apart. Like this is gonna reconstruct the whole thing. Those are the things that we want to see. So there is no like legit formula of like, do these 5 things and we're gonna pick your project. Give us your heart, and if it aligns with our mission of racial healing and justice, then chances look good. We can't make any guarantees, but just give us the heart of the community, and we will fund the heart of the community every day of the week, right? If anybody else has anything, I'm open to that.
I just want to second and amplify what Mia already told us. But that this entire process begins, and continues throughout the whole realm of the project with community engagement and community voice. It was community engagement. It was the community telling us what the funding priorities needed to be and what our granting philosophy kind of needed to look like. And we'll continue that process all throughout the granting process. So a really good resource is to check out the funding priorities, go to the website, check out the funding priorities, and to make sure that you're in alignment. But we'll be in a continuous process with engaging the community to see if we need to reprioritize things. All the important goals are what the community says it needs. So feel free to check out our funding priorities, and we'll be also keeping an ear to the ground.
Okay, thank you. Here's another question. Can individuals donate to the RHJF, the Racial Healing and Justice Fund, and how? Good question. So one of the things that has really come forward is, although we have big hearts and we're constantly hemorrhaging for ourselves and giving to each other all the time already, what we really wanted to do with this particular fund right now, as it stands, is to ask organizations to step forward, ask some of those players that are not already engaged to move forward and share some of their resources, so that way we can lift all of us up. So right now, no, we're not accepting any individual donations. But if you got any sway with an organization, feel free to whisper in their ear. Thank you for that question. Okay. How about I read this next one? And if anyone else wants to answer, here's another question from the community. can I volunteer my time and expertise towards capacity building with the grantees or others connected with the fund? Very good question. Would anyone like to take this one?
Sure, I'll take that one. Short answer is absolutely. You can definitely connect with these organizations and any of these grantees. If they're like, if you have a special skill set, feel free to reach out with them and offer your time and efforts with them. I know that they would greatly appreciate that and would really love it.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything?
I'll chime in and just let you all know that currently, right now, with us being virtual due to the pandemic world, we don't have any hands-on volunteer opportunities that are happening at this moment. But if anything is happening online that you want to take part in, you can always email the CGB at the Racial Healing and Justice Fund webpage or sign up to be notified about anything, because we do have a mailing list so we can let you know when things do become available. But we plan on staying virtual and staying safe for our community, because we know that we are, as Black and Brown folks, the ones that are hit the hardest by this, and we want to keep each other as safe as we can at this time. So now I know we have some questions that came in, I think, through the question and answer portion of the webinar. So I am going to turn it over to David.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one that we have is from Erica Williams. Do programs need to touch on each funding priority or just one of them?
I'm happy to answer on that one. Hello again. So do the programs need to touch on each funding priority or just one of them? No, you do not have to hit all and do all things for all people at all times. So feel free to specialize in, hit one or two, but I would suggest that you help us make those connections between the funding priority and your project.
So we have another question. Can organizations apply for funds for projects planned for next year, or does a project need to occur this year in order to qualify for a grant? I can actually answer that one. So right now, the Racial Healing and Justice Fund is a 3-year initiative, not because we don't think that these kind of investments and pooled resources for Racial Healing and Justice Fund don't need to happen. I mean, we know they need to happen in perpetuity, that this is a generational investment. But for this first pilot, you know, proving the model can work, and under the leadership of this amazing community governance board, we are only doing 1-year grant periods, but we hope as this model proves that it can work, and that we can pass the power to Black and Brown people to decide how to allocate resources, that we can expand in the future and have multi-year offerings. So we have one more. I know several people of color with great healing concepts worth funding and aligned with your goals. Do they need to affiliate with a 501c3 as fiscal agent to accept a grant? Does that 501c3 need to qualify as a minority-led org? If so, what is the criteria for that?
Who wants it?
I was like, Michelle, I feel like you're talking a lot. I can take it if you want me to take it, or you can take it, or we can tag team this, triple team this. Like, we got a lot of people who know this answer. So how about I start off, and then Michelle, you can add anything that I leave out. How does that sound? Good? Awesome.
Good. Aaron, did you want to speak?
All right, hey, we can triple team it. You know, we'll see.
Yes.
Yeah, let's let all like just jump in. So the first granting cycle, as you all know, if you were tuning in through the launch, We asked that folks did have their own fiscal sponsor. We did realize that this was a gap within the community. Not everyone has a 501c3 nonprofit status, and you should not need to. So for this granting cycle, we have aligned some fiscal sponsors that will be able to help some initiatives and organizations that do not have 501c3 status. Like I said, we are aware that this is a gap, so we are steadily working on getting more. If you come and you have an org that has agreed to be your fiscal sponsor, that's great. But for this granting cycle, we are working with a few community partners that will be able to offer their 501c3 status as a nonprofit to grantees that apply. We are always looking for more. So if you know of any folks who are interested, who have that 501c3 status, and also that capacity, that's what's really important, right? The capacity to do that admin work and maybe even the mentoring support that goes along with it. We would love to be connected with them as we move into this second granting cycle so we can build capacity within our community. So we're just making that lever, we're making it work, and we want to make sure that this is sustainable for the folks who need it.
She said it all. I would, she said it all. And so let me amplify that one part that she said, because I want to make sure it's so important that we understand that, yes, there's phenomenal things happening all over the place. And we want to know about all those phenomenal things happening. If there's a question about capacity, we are here to help develop capacity. So before you even think about counting yourself out, count yourself in first. Count yourself in first, because that's the phenomenal thing about this fund, is that we are really seeking to be partners in the work.
Beautifully said, both of you. The last part of that question was, and does that organization need to be minority led? No, it does not. We would, of course, love it if it was, but it's not required because we want to make sure that the recipient, who is minority led, is getting the best opportunities. But no, it is not currently a requirement.
We will ever make sure that their values do align with the Racial Healing and Justice Fund, because y'all, we all got to want the same thing for the same folks.
You took my words, Lady Ashley. I was just about to jump in and say that part. We want to make sure that we are in full alignment.
I was going to say the same thing. So like me and Dawn had them. I was like, well, and.
Yeah, we're here. We're here.
Yes, and.
Yes, and.
All right, I think that is all for the questions that came in during our time today. David, just want to double check to make sure there were no more that came in last minute. Oh, we do have a question from Anna. I see at the bottom. Is there a reporting requirement at the end of the grant cycle? If so, what does that require? And thank you. All right, thank you for that question, Anna. Yes, there will be reporting that is necessary at the end of the grant cycle, and the CGB will work with you, letting you know what we need from you. Of course, we are measuring success differently. This is not the same type of fund as you've seen before, so we will be doing some storytelling to find out what type of folks you're reaching and what the success of your project looks like. And we want to discuss what that looks like for community, because we know it's different for everyone. Also, if you do have a fiscal sponsor, or if you are working with a fiscal sponsor that is provided and you don't have that capacity, that is one of the things that you will discuss with them, how to create that reporting that will be needed at the end of your granting cycle. How was that? Was that a good answer, y'all? You feel like it? Okay, great. All right, well, I think that is all for our community questions for the night. With that, I would like to say thank you, and I want to turn it over to our lovely CGB members, or our CGB member, Patrice. And also just to remind you all, if you have any questions, hit us up on email. We're here to answer them for you, okay? All right.
Hello, everyone. Okay, I'm sorry, window was open, good night. North City base, okay. Community is us. When I was first approached to be a part of the Racial Healing and Justice Fund, I was hesitant because I didn't know how I fit in or what I could offer. But every time that I felt as if this responsibility was too much for me, someone reached out. Community is service. Knowing that I collaborated or still collaborate with a group of individuals that come from different places in life to work on making things just a little bit better for other people and groups is joyous. Community is the basis of what we do. It is to heal the core of communities and to further align new or young change agents within our communities with some of the seasoned or experienced change agents. As it has been mentioned before, the new grant cycle, the second grant cycle, opens on March 21st. So applicants have 4 weeks to complete the application and turn it in. If assistance with the application or any of its processes is needed, there will be time set aside to help. So do not hesitate to reach out. Community is not being alone, but instead lending a hand to better our people, our lives, and our future. Thank you all.
Thanks so much, everybody, for attending. That's all we got for you. Have a safe week.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Good night, everyone.
Bye, y'all. Be safe. Wear a
Good night,
mask.
everyone. Thank you.